Welcome to A Century of Cinema. Today I will be exploring my favourite films of 1959. First up, Otto Preminger's Anatomy of a Murder. It stars James Stewart. He really is in a lot of my favourite movies, isn't he? As lawyer Paul Polly Beagler, who signs on to defend Lieutenant Frederick Mannion, Ben Gazzara, who murdered the man who supposedly raped his wife Laura, and extremely seductive Lee Remick. Beagler is assisted by Arthur O'Connell as his alcoholic buddy Parnell, and his sassy secretary Maida, Eve Arden. And on the other side of the courtroom, the prosecution brings in slick big city prosecutor Claude Dancer, the always punchable George C. Scott. Anatomy of a Murder is hailed as perhaps the best courtroom drama ever, and it's hard to disagree. The novel on which the film was based was written by Michigan Supreme Court Justice John D. Volker and was inspired by a real-life trial in which he acted as defense attorney. So it already has the credibility behind it. But there is real authenticity to the procedures involved. Yet, even with its 2-hour, 40-minute running time, it manages to also be immensely entertaining, largely due to some clever twists and turns and sizzling dialogue, which was deemed a little too racy for some 1959 audiences, but mostly due to the performances. Everybody is bringing their A game. But I must give special mentions to Arthur O'Connell as Parnell, just such a warm and compelling portrayal, Oscar nominated, as was Scott on the other end of the spectrum as a really nasty, slimy piece of work. Sadly left out of the nominations was Lee Remick, whose turn as Laura is one of the most memorable aspects of the movie. Thankfully, Jimmy Stewart got some recognition because he really knocks it out of the park. And even though he didn't need to, he could have carried the whole movie. Warm when he should be, sneaky when he has to be, and very funny right when you need him to be. Best ever or not, regardless, Anatomy of a Murder is a great courtroom drama. Oh, and if you want more, there's also a really cool jazz score by Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn. Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest stars Cary Grant as Roger Thornhill, an ad exec who is kidnapped because he is mistaken for a government agent on the trail of foreign spy Philip Van Dam, James Mason. With the help of his loyal henchman Leonard, a menacing early role for Martin Landau, Thornhill has whiskey poured down his throat and narrowly escapes being driven off a cliff. After he is then arrested for drunk driving, he sets out to discover what it was all about and is soon mistaken for the killer of a diplomat. Trying to evade capture, he boards a train and meets Eva Marie Saint's Eve Kendall, and there is a clear attraction between them. But it turns out Eve is Van Damme's girlfriend. However, as Thornhill is soon told by an actual government agent, Eve is actually working for them. North by Northwest was written by Ernest Lehman as an attempt to write the ultimate Hitchcock movie, and it certainly hits all the beats of one. Mistaken identity, a false murder accusation, a spy plot, a MacGuffin, a pretty blonde, and a climax atop a national monument. Looking at you, saboteur. It is often considered one of Hitchcock's best, and while I would not necessarily go that far, it is definitely a damn good time. Cary Grant is at his most Cary Grantish here, charming and funny as hell throughout. Eva Marie Saint is cool and witty as Eve. Mason makes an excellent precursor to a Bond villain, and Landau is creepy as hell as Leonard. Lehman's screenplay is funny and well-paced, with some scenes that must have had Hitch licking his lips when he read them. The climax on Mount Rushmore is brilliantly executed, second only to that truly iconic crop duster scene. One of the most famous and beloved scenes in movie history. And yeah, it's that good. For that scene alone, it deserves to make this list. Stanley Kramer's On the Beach, based on Nevil Shute's novel, is about the aftermath of global nuclear war, where southern Australia has become temporarily the only place unaffected by radiation and still populated. Gregory Peck stars as Dwight Towers, commander of the last surviving US submarine, who arrives in Melbourne and is placed under Australian Naval Command. Australian officer Peter Holmes, Anthony Perkins, is assigned to him, along with Fred Astaire's bitter scientist Julian Osborne. Towers is introduced to Moira, played by Ava Gardner, and a tentative romance begins. Before Towers, Holmes and Osborne are sent off on a mission to check radiation levels in the Arctic and hunt for the source of a Morse code signal coming from California. With radiation intensifying and the signal nothing more than a Coke bottle tangled in a window shade, the sub returns to Melbourne, where everyone essentially waits for death to catch up with them. It sounds very bleak, and it is. It should be. Yet it is still an enjoyable watch thanks to a heartfelt, clever, and sometimes genuinely funny adaptation of Chute's novel by John Paxton, and an incredibly endearing group of characters. Now, the elephant in the room is that there are a bunch of Americans, those in the most prominent roles apart from Peck, playing Australians. As an Australian myself, I can tell you that hearing Americans attempt Australian accents is generally cringe-inducing. But I don't experience that so much with On the Beach. Not because the accents are perfect, which they are not, but because they are understated and subtle. I think Anthony Perkins in particular really sells it. There are times when his accent actually is perfect. And this may be his best performance too. Well, there's a big one coming up next year, but I'll address that then. It is, however, certainly the best of Ava Gardner and Fred Astaire, for my money. I have never liked Ava Gardner in anything else but On the Beach. But she is just so damn authentic in this as the drunk, broken Moira. When I watch her performance, I feel like I know that woman. And she doesn't just get drunk, she gets Aussie drunk. And then we have the non-dancing Astaire, who is actually amazing as Julian. I can't even single out anything particular about the performance. He just completely inhabits the character. And I believe the same can be said for Gregory Peck. In a career full of excellent lead performances, this is easily one of his absolute best. It's the agony and denial of Dwight Towers that makes him such a compelling character. And you see Peck holding in genuine pain, because that's who he is. Dwight Towers doesn't break down. He may crack a bit, but he never crumbles. So Gregory Peck is my choice for Best Actor of 1959.
What I didn't reckon with was that in this kind of a monstrous war, something might happen to them, and not to me.
Finally, Alain René's Hiroshima Mon Amour. Emmanuelle Riva stars as a French actress filming a movie in Hiroshima who has a night of passion with a local architect, played by Eiji Okada, which is very quickly becoming more affecting than either had planned. This passion disturbs her since she is haunted by her past tragic affair with a German soldier who was killed when France was liberated, and how, as a consequence, she was ostracized and effectively imprisoned by her town. He, however, refuses to simply let her go and continuously tries to make her stay. That is the plot, but that is not the story of Hiroshima Mon Amour. There is so very much more to say about this hauntingly beautiful film. More than I can say here, but I will give it a go. From the first shot of the two entwined, writhing bodies covered in ash, you know you're in for a unique film experience. For the next 13 minutes or so, these bodies, now free from ash and clearly engaged in passionate sex, are intercut with scenes from Hiroshima, the streets, the museum dedicated to the bombing, recreations of the aftermath, and actual footage from the horrific effects of the bomb. Played over this footage is the conversation of the lovers, which simultaneously plays as narration, character development, and a poetic duet. It is an incredibly powerful and at times horrendously upsetting sequence. From there, we focus entirely on the lovers. Riva and Okada have amazing chemistry, with performances to match, particularly that of Emmanuelle Riva. It is, in my opinion, one of the most affecting and honest film performances of all time. Criminally underappreciated by every major academy or festival. Eiji Okada is excellent too, don't get me wrong, but Riva's role has the most meat on it, and she is impeccable in every single shot. Plus, she embodies this subtle, timeless beauty, tailor-made for inspiring adoration. Speaking of beauty, the cinematography of Sasha Vianney and Michio Takahashi is stunning, moody, and magical. And the use of two cinematographers has the added effect of creating a noticeable visual distinction between the present and the past, providing a spectacular canvas for Marguerite Duras' intimate and poetic screenplay. Watching this film makes me fervently wish I knew more French because I know just enough to know what I'm missing. The English translation still conveys plenty of the elegance and lyricism of the work, but I do feel like fluent French speakers might be getting a little more out of it. Lucky bastards. Alain Resnais was requested to make a film about the bombing of Hiroshima, due to the acclaim of his documentary about Nazi death camps, Night and Fog. But he realised he didn't really know how to talk about it, so he made a work of fiction about not knowing how to deal with tragedy. And his work here is nothing short of brilliant. Everything I mentioned about the performances, the cinematography, and the screenplay also easily apply to Resnais's direction. This film is a masterpiece. That is why it is my choice for Best Screenplay, Marguerite Duras, Best Actress for Emmanuelle Riva, Best Director for Alain Resnais, and Best Picture of 1959. Join me next time on A Century of Cinema when I will be discussing my favourite films of 1960. Yep, we're getting into the 60s now. Now go watch a movie.